but they let her off the hook after 2 weeks. This occurred the month before the following story. So within a month of my new curfew, I was 5 minutes late getting home. I didn't rush home, I figured it wasn't a big deal. After all, I made their house run, and I actually never got in trouble because aside from brushing my teeth too late, I pretty much was an adult with adult responsibilities. I could literally ask my mom to call me in sick for school because I didn't feel like going, and she would. Boy, was I wrong. They went nuclear. I was screamed at for an hour and grounded for 2 weeks from the car. Well, growing up in that house, it kind of rolled off my back, laugh out loud. But I was pretty angry that my punishment for being 5 minutes late was equal to my sister's punishment for storing and smoking drugs in our house. I also knew that my parents were about to regret this punishment. I have quite the mean streak when I'm pushed, and I'm ashamed to admit I love torturing them at every opportunity. I know they were expecting me to beg for the car and apologize, but I did not. I knew exactly what was coming and how little they thought this one through. There's a phrase, don't kill the golden goose. Well, when your entire household runs on the shoulders of a 17-year-old, you've made some bad life choices, especially when that 17-year-old is as smart and reliable as the adults are supposed to be. The next day, yes, the very next day, my mother comes into my room and asks me to drop off a bill she forgot to mail. This isn't word for word, but the gist. I have to meet with a client and don't have time. I need you to run this to local utility company. Yes, she never asks, she demands. Looking up from my book, sorry, I'm grounded. Well, we'll make an exception. No, because then I'll never learn to not be 5 minutes late for curfew. Yes, my smart buttness was the main reason I wasn't the favorite child. As they explained to me many times, I apparently had an attitude problem from the age of 4. Well, I really need you to take this to local utility. If you don't, we'll have to pay a late fee. Well, if I'm grounded from the car, I'm grounded from the car. I won't be doing any errands until it's over. She huffed off, realizing her mistake. I never followed up with how that one turned out for her. Over the next week, I started acting like a normal teenager. I walked to my friends' houses. I was only grounded from the car. Would call my parents when I needed a ride home. Laugh out loud, that was my favorite. I can't be late for curfew, and you don't want me walking home in the dark. I actually walked so much and so far that my thighs were rock hard at the end of the week. During that week, my parents looked a mess. They had to drive my sister everywhere and learned how exhausting it really was. They had to actually plan their errands and watch their own kids. I was on vacation. During that week, the requests went from, we'll make an exception, to, we never meant you couldn't run errands, to, these errands are the only reason we let you drive that car, to, please, just this once, we only grounded you because we love you, to, you're so ungrateful, you're supposed to be the responsible one. Basically, the whole gambit of manipulation. At this point, I'm gaslight proof, and I had actively hated my mom for over 3 years. I was enjoying myself so much that I sometimes wonder why I enjoyed being a psychopath to her when I'm actually not one at all. I have diagnostic proof that I'm not a psychopath, laugh out loud. By the end of the first week, I was called out to have a talk with them. My mother was the tougher of the two. My dad was pretty cool, but always sided with her. We've decided you've learned your lesson. We're letting you off your punishment early, but you have to start running your errands again and driving your siblings. No, I'm good with the current system. I insist, we don't have time to run errands. Smiling because finally. Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you took away my car. Well, if you don't run the errands, you can't have the car back. Fine with me. I walked out of the room like a proud peacock. After the 2 weeks were up, they assumed I'd be back to normal. Nope, I basically told them that I'd rather walk as the number of responsibilities far outweighed the benefits of driving. They were not happy, but what could they really do? They lasted 1 more week. I went carless for a total of 3 weeks. Finally, my mom broke down and did the unthinkable. She begged. Well, the words were begging, the tone was sucking up, but I truly enjoyed it. It took all my energy not to beam with self-pride. Now, my mother was a saleswoman. She had been inadvertently training me for years. In that moment, I opened negotiations. In the end, I got an extra $10 a week in gas money on top of the $3 here or there for unscheduled errands. I still had the curfew, but I got a few minutes grace period from then on. They never even dared to threaten to take my car or license away again. But the cherry on top, my sister's personal taxi service was closed. Apparently, she treated them the same way she treated me during her frequent and unnecessary rides, and from then on, she had to be nice if she wanted a ride. There were a few incidences where she tried to get my parents to force me to take her or take her where I was going, but they didn't. They knew better than to kill their golden goose of home management, and for the rest of the year, I finally had a great childhood because I was left alone on my own terms. It was mentioned down in the comments for this one that setting a curfew for your kids can be a great thing. However, make sure you give them a little bit of leeway, because if you're saying they have to be home at this very specific time and there's huge consequences for even 5 minutes missed, it's terrible, and it means they might speed or break traffic laws and maybe hurt themselves or worse, someone else. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Kath Joy. Manager forces me to get doctor's note despite it being illegal to do so. Doctor writes him the most passive-aggressive note, signing me off for 2 weeks instead of 2 days to teach him a lesson. Let's jump right in. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a supermarket. I should note that I was a pretty reliable employee. I was never late. In fact, I often got in early and I rarely called in sick. At the time this happened, I had not called in sick for 9 months, and even then, the manager had sent me home. I had been up all night, swinging between burning hot and freezing cold, so I was obviously feverish and I had been throwing up at both ends, shall we say. At one point, at about 2 a.m., I was on the toilet with my head in the sink, utterly miserable. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, I was lifting my head off the sink and it was 7 a.m. I was due to start work at 12 that day, but that obviously wasn't going to happen. So I called up the manager. Let's call the manager Steve. Steve was known for being a real a-hole. He never believed anyone who called in sick except his best buds. Usually the other managers, never lowly staff, but often called in sick himself. A lot of the time we knew it was because he was hungover and not actually sick. The conversation went as follows. Hey Steve, sorry, I can't come in, I'm sick. With what? I don't know, I think it might be the flu. I've been up all night being sick and I have a fever. Don't be stupid, if you had the flu, you'd be completely knocked out. I need you in, come in or you're fired. I can't. I just told you I can't stop vomiting. I passed out. Either come in or bring a doctor's note or you're fired. In the UK, you are legally allowed to self-certify for 5 days. This means you can tell your employer you are sick and you do not need a doctor's note. If you are sick for more than 5 days, you then need a note. It is also illegal to demand a doctor's note during the self-certify period. I knew this, but I was terrified. This was during the recession. I couldn't afford to lose my job. So I got myself dressed, almost passed out trying to do so, then trudged to the doctor some 25 minutes walk away. I ended up sitting in the doctor's office for a little over an hour, which for walk-in was pretty good. I get in to see the doctor and she is furious at me for coming in. You're not supposed to come to the doctors when you have a cold or flu, and of course, I knew I should be able to self-certify. She told me as such, saying I shouldn't be here and should have stayed at home. I then explained what had happened with Steve and how he had threatened to fire me over this, and I couldn't afford to lose my job. I was struggling as it was. My doctor turned her anger towards my manager. She asked if I got sick pay from the company, and I said yes. He wants a sick note, does he? The doctor says. Okay, I'll give him a sick note. Now, my manager just wants a note confirming I was sick, but instead, my doctor wrote something along the lines of this. OP has come to the surgery because manager name has insisted she come in spite of the fact that this is illegal and all employees are allowed to self-certify, due to being forced to make this unnecessary and highly dangerous trip when the patient is ill, has a fever of 39 Celsius, and almost passed out in the waiting room. I am signing OP off for 2 full weeks to recover. Had OP been allowed to self-certify as is the law, they might have only needed a few days